All right. Hey, welcome everyone. This is Mark coming again. We are reading Luke together. This is the way we at the Bridge Church are preparing for Easter. We're reading a chapter of Luke every day. We started a few weeks ago, and if you are on pace, today you're reading Luke 15. You're reading about the prodigal son today. Just an awesome parable from Scripture. That's Luke 15. But as you know, we've been inviting someone to come along and do a little video, just kind of sharing what we learned as we read through the Gospel of Luke, hearing from different perspectives. And as I read Luke 14, there's a section in there that really emphasizes disabilities ministry. And of course, that's something that's very special to us at the Bridge. That is just part of our heart. That's part of our DNA. That's just part of who we are as a church. As a matter of fact, we just had this amazing event with Nazareth, who came in, and we raised more money than we hoped to for Make Them Smile. Make Them Smile is the event we do for kids with disabilities and their family to go to the zoo at Moore Park College. And it's just an amazing time to really care for their families, to love their families. It's in September, so we'll be telling you a lot more about it as we get closer. Just a reminder, Easter, Good Friday service is at 7 p.m. We're going to be baptizing on Easter. So if you've not followed the Lord in baptism, let us know. We'd love to talk to you about that. Well, as Luke 14 just really struck a chord with me about disabilities, I reached out to an old friend of mine. An old friend of mine named Jeff McNair. Jeff McNair came and spoke at the Bridge back in 2019, I think. Jeff is... I'll just bring him up now. There you are, Jeff. So I was about to give all your bio stuff, but you're Cal Baptist? You're still Cal Baptist?
Still a Cal Baptist.
All right. And you're doing some work in I almost said Philistines. In the Philippines?
No, not the Philistines, the Philippines. That's something different. But.
That's awesome. Well, of course, you know, I had just started at the Bridge Church when we held a Disabilities Sunday and invited you out. And that was just, people still talk about it. It was a great time having you out. So thanks for that. And I wanted to talk with you about Luke 14, because there's one section of that really gets to the heart of disabilities ministry. And would you mind reading that passage?
Absolutely. First, I got to tell you, too, you guys are blessed to have this guy as your pastor. And any excuse I ever get to hang with him, the other way. Any excuse I ever get to hang with him, I'm all over it. So I'm delighted to be able to spend a couple of minutes with Mark and with you all, too.
So. And full disclosure, we did this on a whim. I'm like, hey, are you available in like 20 minutes? Sure, let's jump on this. This is awesome.
Yeah, but he promised me a really nice lunch out of this, so I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah,
he doesn't know that. He didn't know that. I just made that up.
Come on out, Jeff. I'll tell you.
All right, well, let me dive into this. Jesus is at a dinner, and earlier in the dinner, before he gives this parable, he says, when you put on a luncheon or banquet, make sure that you invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. So he starts with that to people at this dinner, but then he later does this whole parable about this wedding feast. So I'll read that real quick. Starts in verse 15. It says, hearing this, a man sitting at the table with Jesus exclaimed, what a blessing it is to be able to attend a banquet in the kingdom of God. Jesus replied with this story. A man prepared a great feast and sent out many invitations. When the banquet was ready, he sent his servant to tell the guests, come on, the banquet's ready. But they all began making excuses. One said, well, I just bought a field and have to inspect it. Please excuse me. Another said, I just bought 5 pairs of oxen and I want to try them out. Please excuse me. And another said, I just got married, so I can't come. The servant returned and told his master what they had said. His master was furious and said, go quickly out into the streets and alleys of the town and invite the poor, again, the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. After the servant had done this, he reported, there's still room. There's room for more. So his master said, go out into the country lanes behind the hedges and urge anyone you find to come so that my house will be full. For none of those I first invited will get even the smallest taste of this banquet.
Wow.
So, yeah, should I jump in here?
Jump in.
Okay, so this is a fascinating thing that Jesus initially talks about inviting these people when he's talking to the guests at the dinner that he's at, saying, invite people who don't have the ability to do something back for you. Now, someone can all do something back, say God bless you, say thank you, and whatever. But I think the idea is they're not going to be able to fund a dinner for you to come back. So, and it's just like in a lot of ways, it's metaphorical on some level about how people who have been invited to come and be a part of the Christian community, to become faithful, have made excuses and haven't come. And the thing is unfortunately, we focus on those people instead of these other folks potentially who will come. That's one thing you learn about folks with disability. If I knock on the door of a group home and ask a bunch of intellectually disabled adults, you want to come to church? They'll say, yeah, when are you going to pick me up? And it's kind of sad that we're not interested in having those people come. But it's interesting. The guest makes excuses. The master is furious. He's angry. I think he's angry that these people don't want to come. And their excuses, I mean, probably Mark has unpacked this at some point. Their excuses are kind of weak.
They're horrible excuses, yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of weak excuses. But so then the thing he says, go out and find the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame, and invite those people in. Now, there's a degree to which this is kind of reminiscent of the church, because it's kind of like the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame are almost a second thought as to who we should invite in. But Jesus says through the words of this guy, go out there to the streets and the alleys. So we're not talking at knocking on people's houses and saying, come in. We're going out to where these poor people would live. These blind, lame people would live. They're like homeless people, like we see all over LA today on some level. So he says, go out and invite them in. And so they go out and they invite these people in, and they come back and they say, there's still room. And now he goes even deeper into the quote, homeless or whatever. Go into the country lane. So now we're outside of town. Go behind the hedges. I thought that was a funny phrase when I first saw that. These people who are kind of homeless or whatever, hiding behind the hedges so they don't get caught, right? So go out and look behind the hedges and find those people and invite them in. And then they do that, and they say there's still room. Now, there's one phrase I've really picked up on this a lot when I've taught about this. In verse 23, it says, go out and urge them to come in. And other versions say, compel them to come in. Well, imagine that I'm having this big, huge wedding feast. I got all this food, fancy entertainment, all this stuff. I invite these kind of devalued people in, and they don't want to come, potentially. So I have to urge or compel them to come. Why would they not come to this amazing, beautiful feast? In my opinion, it's because they don't trust that guy. They don't trust the guy who's inviting them. I can just see it now. They show up and the guy was like, oh, look at these people. They thought we really wanted them here. Ha ha, joke's on you all, right? They don't trust that they really want them. It's interesting. I had a dear friend who was a man who had been beaten and left for dead, just like the Good Samaritan guy, Toby. You remember Toby, Mark? But I remember he said, if you invite me into your church, don't ignore me when I get there.
Wow.
So this idea of compelling. So I find that individuals with disabilities oftentimes need to be compelled because they have learned not to trust us, right? They have learned not to trust us. I've often said to people, when you start a disability ministry or try to include people with disabilities and their families, your starting point should be to ask for forgiveness. Your starting point should be to say, we have not treated you as you deserve. We have not loved you as you deserve. Will you give us a second chance? That's the starting point. The starting point is not, hey, it's your lucky day. I'm God's gift to you. No, because these people have been hurt. There's so many people, and probably Mark has had this experience as well. There's so many people with disabilities who have been hurt by churches because they have been excluded. And when they do come, they actually really don't want them. So this notion of compel, I think, is really critical. So if it was the wedding feast, maybe I'd go out and say to these folks, listen, my master is really upset with me. He told me I need to get you guys to come. What can I do? What can I do to make you come? Can I bring you some of the food that you could taste, right?
Yeah.
I already apologized. I apologize we have not invited you sooner. What can I do to get you to come in? Please give me a second chance, right? I've not treated you like you deserved. I think that's the notion behind this idea of compel. And I think that is a really aspect of this. So when we're thinking about this passage in the context of people with disabilities, we need to recognize that there's a lot that we need to do, from a asking for forgiveness, from a humility, from a documenting that we really will love you kind of phase in order to get these people to come. One last thing, and then Mark respond and we go off from here, but
Yeah.
It was fascinating. I get to speak about this stuff all over the world, and I was in Melbourne, Australia, and I was speaking in front of a big group of people, 100 people or whatever, and I was talking about this passage, and I said, I've never been here before to Australia, and probably have no right to say this, but let me say on behalf of the Christian community, on the behalf of the Christian community, I apologize to you if you're a person in the audience who have been treated poorly by the church. Will you please forgive us for the way we have treated you? And all of a sudden in the back, there's this wailing and kind of crying and whatever from this woman. And she said, I've been waiting for that. I've been waiting for that apology. And so it's not just something that I'm kind of making up. It's a real thing that people often feel that hurt. And so when you invite, people may be hesitant because they don't trust you. They don't trust, not you specifically,
right,
but they don't trust us in the Christian community. So we need to document that we really will love you. If you come, will you really give us another chance to try to get it right?
Right. Now, unpack a couple of examples of, what does that look like to really love people when they come? I mean, because sometimes it's like, we will love you if you can, sit quietly and not make any noise. We will love you if you can physically maneuver around the building. Kind of unpack a little bit about what it means to love people well when we invite them.
One of the most beautiful examples I ever saw was in your church, Mark, and you could unpack it better than I could. And I don't know if the family is still there, but I recall during worship, there was a young man who, I think he had autism or something, and he'd kind of wander around, even wander up on the stage behind Mark while he is teaching. And Mark would, I don't remember exactly, you have to unpack it, but Mark would say even something like, I'm okay with this. All right, let's just keep going. You unpack that a little bit, because that was beautiful.
That's exactly what happened. That's a family that we just love. And he kind of came up on stage, and, like every other church, we have a safety team, security team, and I could see them kind of getting into position. And I just had to tell them, hey, this is my friend. And it is okay that he's up on stage with me. And that was a powerful time.
That's a hugely powerful example of that. It's more important that this person and his family is here than we have some enforcement of certain social skills in a congregation. That was so powerful, Mark.
Well, there's a lot of, just great things we can do to welcome people. We are, one of the things that our children's ministry is working on, that we haven't implemented yet, but we're working on, is a buddy system on Sunday mornings. By the way, I just told you that I was just reading someone's dissertation that I worked with him on. He gave an interesting thing. He went to the families in his church that had kids with disabilities and said, who would you want to be a buddy for your child? Do you know what every one of them said? A high school student.
Yeah.
It was interesting. And he unpacked that. He said the high school kids, they have been trained in school to live with, accommodate, people with disabilities. So, you'll be their buddy at recess. You'll hang out with them. And he said they've grown up in a world where they've been very accepting of peers with disabilities, and they make great buddies. And, we were in the same church together back in Redlands a few years ago. And when I think through the buddies, some were teenagers, but a lot were adults. And it was interesting to think through from a parent perspective. Is like, we'd love to have teenagers in this room.
Yeah.
And that was an eye opener for me in the midst of that. But I think, as churches, we need to think through what does that look like for us? There's going to be some messiness, but we're all messy, right? There's going to be, maybe some extra noise, but it's a good noise. It's a healthy noise. It's the sound of people being loved and welcomed into a church and invited to the feast. And by the way, can you imagine in this parable what that feast was like when you've got a room full of people who have been out in the highways and hedges, and the privileged people are out, looking at their oxen that they already bought, or I don't know what the guy was doing with it. I got married, so I'm worthless now, so I don't know what that was about. But the people who were first invited, and the story begins with the guy saying, "Hey, blessed are all of us who will eat bread in the kingdom of heaven." And the point of the parable is kind of, you may not be there, buddy. I mean, that's the point of it, right? Yeah. But I just picture this scene of the people who've been excluded, the poor, the lame, the blind, the crippled. What a party that must have been, when they're welcomed into the best of food. And I know from the ministry in Redlands, when your class parties, it's a party.
We have a good time.
Yeah. And I could
let me give you a couple other points too, real quick. Yeah. And one is that you all who are listening, you have the ability to invite people in. They don't get typical experiences. They may have never been to a barbecue. And so you have the ability to invite those people in. So there's an actual application here of what you can do as a kind of, as Mark was saying, in terms of showing love. But another one of my favorite passages, which is good to look at in the context of disability ministry, is 1 Corinthians 12. And towards the end of 1 Corinthians 12, there's two things it says. The parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. But another verse after that says, the parts that we think are less honorable, to them we show special honor. So the example that we gave with Mark during his sermon, right? I could look on it, I'd be wrong to do this, but I could look on someone with autism and say, they look less honorable. So what's my response going to be? I'm not going to exclude them. I'm not going to devalue them. I'm going to show them special honor. And that is that I don't expect everybody in the congregation to be wandering on the stage while I'm doing my sermon, right? Like Mark did. But the fact of the matter is, I recognize that this is someone who needs to be shown a little special honor. And so I change my social demands on the environment so that that person can be accepted. And once again, it's a beautiful thing when you see it. And what Mark did was incredible.
Well, and one of the things you did back when I was in Redlands, y'all came across some tickets to see the Harlem Globetrotters. I don't know if you remember this or not, but they were given to the Light and Power class, which is the class for adults with disabilities. And so you came to leaders of the church, or maybe just whoever from the church, I don't remember, but we said, we're going to give you 2 tickets, or you take your family to see the Globetrotters, but here's the catch. You have to take someone from Light and Power and take them out to dinner, and then take them to go see the Globetrotters. And that was such a cool opportunity of just going out like, hey, where do you want to go eat? The answer was Del Taco. I love that. That fits my budget. Let's go to Del Taco. And just the funny thing was, though, I came in thinking, okay, we're going to be gracious host. We're going to go overboard. We're going to sit with this. And we got there, and it was almost like your teenage kids do, because the game started and she kind of looked at us and said, you mind if I go sit with my friends instead of you? But it was awesome. But you're right. Just things like Del Taco. I know you have another good friend that, recently went to be with the Lord in Mark. And I just think of Mark and Josh as your son, Josh, as the burrito buddies, right? And sometimes it's, you don't have to take them out to a fancy dinner, but just something simple. Yeah. Well, listen, I've taken more of your time than I planned on. So I want to thank you for just spending some time unpacking this passage. Actually, Tim Wagner, who's on staff here, is going to be preaching this passage at the Bridge. So it'll be a good one if you're listening to this. If you've made it through all 20 minutes, I see Nuria is on there. So good morning to you. Good to see you. But thank you so much, Jeff. We'll go ahead and sign off for now. But if you have, any questions about this, or this is something we as a church want to keep leaning into. So if you have any input or want to be involved, please reach out. You can put something in the comments to this. You can reach out to me. We'd love to see how we can explore this, how to do better as a church. We do buddy break, we do friendship class, but let's keep leaning into what God would have us to do to reach this segment of our community that just aren't in church on Sundays. And there's a real calling to help them know and love Jesus. So thank you again, Jeff. And
Thank you, Mark. God bless all.
Hop on the train. Come on out. Lunch is on me.
Okay.
All right. God bless.